They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime.
Donald Trump has not just begun his white nativist agenda, he has simply carried it out since he entered office in 2016.
I know that many of you prepared for today's hearing by making sure that you got a little bit of information about immigrants and crime in your cities. Let me ask each of the mayors, just yes or no, have any of you been made aware of any immigrant that has had 34 felony convictions that has still been able to roam around in your cities? Anyone?
No, ma'am.
34 felony convictions.
No, Congresswoman.
From the immigrants. Anybody?
I'm not aware.
Oh, okay. I'm just curious because we are so concerned about crime, and I know that my Republican colleagues would never want anybody with 34 felony convictions roaming around because that could be a danger to the community, but I will move on.
Meanwhile, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett calls out the hypocrisy of Trump and Republicans railing against migrants committing crimes when the proof is in the pudding all along.
DEI is a fundamental attack on the American dream. Let me tell you, as the son of a factory worker who grew up in a trailer park, now serving in the United States Senate, that American dream is very personal to me. DEI is the biggest threat to the American dream, but the golden age of America means the death of DEI.
Lots of falsehoods here. That's Representative Jim Banks of Indiana. For starters, he raised nearly $7,200,000 in 2023-2024. He is simply another loyal foot soldier in promoting the MAGA agenda so he can reap the benefits from his donors.
The only reason we're having this hearing is because somebody got their feelings hurt in a debate. And I don't understand why we're wasting taxpayer dollars. Next time, tell your big boy to show up and be ready to handle the woman in the room who hopefully will become the next president of the United States. And the final thing that I will say is that this election, I didn't ask you a question. The final thing that I will say is that this election is the best example of why y'all are so afraid of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because then you can't have a simple-minded, underqualified white man somehow end up ascending. Instead, you've got to pay attention to the qualified black woman that is on the other side. And with that, I will yield.
While this clip was pre-election, it still rings true. Trump and his like attack DEI for good reason, because they cannot compete.
There are guilty verdicts from our producer inside. We're hearing guilty on 1 through 5. 1 through 12, we have now 13, 14 guilty. 15 guilty. We're up to 18 counts, 19 guilty. Remember, we have 34 here, 20 guilty. We are now 24 counts in, all guilty from inside. This is what we are hearing from our producers. Up to 26 guilty.
Count 27, guilty. Another felony charge, falsifying business records in the first degree. Count 28, guilty. Another felony charge, falsifying business records in the first degree. Count 29, guilty. Felony charge, falsifying business records in the first degree. Count 30, guilty. Felony charge, falsifying business records. Count 31, guilty, falsifying business records in the first degree. Count 32, guilty, falsifying business records in the first degree. Only 2 counts left. Count 33, former President Donald Trump found guilty, falsifying business records. Count 34.
Guilty.
It's almost ironic.
When we're talking about somebody that's committed high crimes, it's at least indictments. Let's say 32 counts related to unauthorized retention of national security secrets, 7 counts related to obstructing the investigation, 3 false statements, 1 count of conspiracy to defraud the United States, falsifying business records, conspiracy to defraud the United States, 2 counts related to efforts to obstruct the vote certification proceedings, 1 count of conspiracy to violate civil rights, 23 counts related to forgery or false document statements, 8 counts related to soliciting, and I could go on because he's got 91 counts pending right now.
The party of law and order are bending over backwards to defend a felon while railing against black and brown people and mandating their cult-like followers attack with vicious rage in order to continue keeping the wheel of hate spinning.
The ranking member invoked the Breonna Taylor episode, and I've just been sitting here reviewing it. Mr. Goldman said earlier on, well, this wasn't a no-knock warrant. Okay, what's the difference in the situation if they knock and they blow in, in 20 seconds, or it's a no-knock? In fact, in the Breonna Taylor case, that wasn't a no-knock warrant. They said they knocked and waited 45 seconds, and they went in. I don't understand the difference. I don't understand my colleagues reaction that
if you would yield, I could share the difference with you.
You've talked for a long time. I'm going to talk during my time.
Okay, then I would tell you.
Maybe you can provide context for your egregious double standard. No one that I recall on the Republican side, when the Breonna, by the way, you said this is interfering in the process to have this hearing. The first time Congress had a hearing was in June 2020 over the Breonna Taylor episode. There was no concern about interfering. The concern was about the use of this kind of tactic to enter unnecessarily and jeopardize people's lives. Yep. Now suddenly that seems to be of no concern whatsoever.
And when Republican Dan Bishop made this diatribe in regards to Breonna Taylor, RIP.
I do want to make sure that before we go down this road, I clarify some things that were different in the Breonna Taylor case. Number one, the officers were considered to have botched what took place on that day because they fired blindly into a home, meaning that they initiated some sort of deadly force, and the only information that they had was allegedly that this was the place of some sort of drug activity. At that point in time, you ended up having her boyfriend, who returned fire, believing that someone was breaking in. It is very different when you are returning fire versus initiating fire, and there was no need to do so. In this particular set of circumstances, we know that if somebody shoots at me, in fact, some would argue that last week I had a colleague that decided she wanted to shoot at me, I'm going to shoot back. And that's what happened here, but what's more frustrating for me in this hearing, and what seems to be a pattern, is that we continue to attempt to litigate pending cases. We saw that we had one of the witnesses in the Trump trial. He came and testified before us last week, and then he went and testified this week in front of the judiciary.
Crockett was there to check him.
This president has single-handedly not just been shutting the government down, but literally trying to dismantle it, and I haven't heard a word out of them. In addition to that, we know that we have been talking about impoundment, which is basically saying, hey, the power of the purse belongs to Congress. Well, guess what? Our speaker doesn't act that way. He doesn't get out there and say, hey, Mr. President, you can't do this. Once we've appropriated dollars, then these dollars are supposed to be for this. And one of the things that they're not talking about in this continuing resolution is the fact that they are going to give even more latitude. This is basically going to be a slush fund for Elon and Donald Trump. They are getting rid of the parameters around the spending. I think the comparison was that we have maybe 88 total pages of kind of whatever the parameters are for how the monies are to be spent, but the majority of the discretion goes to Trump and Elon.
She also continues calling out the man who has been dubbed the shadow president, the richest man in the world, who benefits greatly from socialism in the form of our tax dollars and government contracts, Elon Musk. Hey, I appreciate you watching. Now, if you can, please do become a channel member by going to youtube.com/TYT Sports and clicking the join button. If that's too much for you, you can just go to tyt.com/join to become a member. It helps all of us out here at the Young Turks and keeps our network afloat. In addition, you could follow me on my socials on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Appreciate the love. Have a great day.